But one of the key points I would like to make is my year as chairman of the Institute coincided with Lord Mays's year as Lord Mayor. I got to know him very well, a marvellous man, and we are indebted to him for all that he did for the company. In fact, we asked him to become our founder master, but he said, no, I think it should be one of the 7. And since Reggie Bowden was chairman of the Working Party, he became our founder master. My year was a year of change. To start with, we had a new clerk, a new beadle, and a new chaplain, a marvellous man, John Oates, who was always available to help members. Also, the thing was, we'd been a livery company for 7 years. It was time to look at the company and to see what changes had to be made in our method of operation. The first thing was we had to strengthen the court. We brought in 6 new members of the court, 3 of whom became masters. The next thing we had to look at is planning. There virtually wasn't any. So we drew up a 5-year development plan. The other thing we did was ask members what they really wanted from the company. And one of the things that came out, they wanted to get to know fellow members better. And so we set up get to know you meetings and workshops. And I suppose the final thing was fellowship. I believe very, very strongly that what we have to do is to strengthen the bond between our members. The 7 of us who started the company were firm friends, and in fact, I knew most of the 53, what we called founder members, although they didn't found the company, and I knew indeed many of the 157 of members in my year. So we, as I say, wanted to increase fellowship. Now, when it comes, are we dealing with highlights as well?
By all means.
Right. Well, one of the highlights, I was fortunate to be one of the 12 masters that were there to greet the Lord Mayor when he returned to the Mansion House. That was a highlight. I think another highlight was I was again one of the 12 masters who had to entertain the livery companies of Zurich. That was a highlight. But of course, the outstanding highlight was when Prince Philip came to receive his honorary freeman's certificate. We had 230 people at the lunch, and bear in mind we had at that time 157 members. It was a marvellous occasion. He is a marvellous man. I had met him several times through the Institute of Marketing, and it was wonderful to see him again at the charter dinner, which he was so ably, I must say, mastered.
Well, I didn't realise when I became junior warden what was happening over the next 2 or 3 years. And when it came to 1989, I suddenly realised it was the 800th anniversary of the Mayoralty. And I said to someone, I forget who it was, I said, well, why me at this time of the company's history? And they said, well, on occasions like this, they have to have a master who can cope with everything that's going to go on in that year. So I was quite proud to think that I'd been chosen for that. I planned the year 2 years before. I had a predecessor in Eric Morgan, who was an example to anyone of excellence in everything he did. There was nothing that Eric did that didn't meet perfection. And I thought, how do I follow that? Most masters were beginning to find something of their own that they wanted to include in their year. But I decided that I can't improve on what Eric's done, so I'm going to follow what he's done. Just quality, quality, quality. And I remember in the early days of planning, a year, 18 months beforehand, I had 2 or 3 people around me. Jeff Darby was my junior warden. And Liz Nelson was in the company then. She was in advertising, a very clever lady. We decided to have a meeting in a little Chinese restaurant at the back of Smithfield Meat Market. And she said, you and Valerie come early because I'm announcing the engagement of my daughter. So I said, fine. So we joined them, and she announced that her daughter was being engaged to the cardiovascular surgeon at Bart's Hospital. And he was also the conductor of Bart's orchestra, classic orchestra. John, forget his other name, but John will suffice. We talked for a while, and I said that I wanted to have some form of classical music in my year. And they said, well, why don't you have a concert? Because all that year I was getting the total support of the corporation, the city and the corporation, through a lady called Fenella Forsyth, who was had access to almost anything. Everything goes. The year started, I thought was absolutely wonderful. I went to the Lord Mayor's birthday party, because that's what they called it. And a Shakespearean actor took the part of Samuel Pepys. And he announced the birthday of the Lord Mayor, and then went into a little bit of history about the 800 years from 1189, when Henry Fitzalan was the first Lord Mayor. And this birthday cake was going to be a year full of surprises. And of course, ours was included at the end of the year. But by the time I took office on the 18th of January, I'd been to Mansion House 7 times. By March, 7 times.
This small acorn of an idea through this wonderful concert.
And then I had a committee comprising, Jeff Darby headed up the committee for me, the anniversary concert committee. Decided to leave it till the end of the year, because that gave us maximum time. And we sat down and we said, well, we're going to have a theme for this. Well, because it was the 800th anniversary year, 800 seemed to be the ideal thing. So we decided to price the tickets at £80 a head, which everybody thought was far too expensive. We try and get 800 people, and I got Fenella Forsyth agreed to give us the whole of Guildhall, and the crypts, and the Grand Library. So that was the place where we'd hold it. We then went on to talk about the programme. They said we should have a typical London programme. So all the pieces were London pieces, all about London. And I said, well, I want a good compere. So we came up with the idea of having Richard Baker. Well, Jeff Darby was a tremendous help, because he had so many contacts through the taverners, through other people connected with Cadbury's and Schweppes. And so I got a tremendous team. And so we started. John Treasure was head of Saatchi in those days, and he agreed to do the programme. And he came up with this idea of this A4 programme with the Lord Mayor's chain, celebration chain, in the form of a letter 8 on the front cover. And that was put into a rough. It was tremendous. We decided to take 12 Lord Mayors, each page devoted to a Lord Mayor, successful Lord Mayor over the last 800 years. Whittington was obviously a choice. There were several others. The Lord Mayor that abolished slavery, Wilberforce, he was another page. And there was 12 great pages. Any company who wanted to sponsor those, £1,000. So we got £1,000 a page for those.
You ended up raising a huge amount of money for charity.
Over 40,000 in one night.
£40,000.
And we decided, because everything was going so successfully in the lead up to this, I mailed the whole of the Institute of Marketing, personal letter from the Master, I believed that everything I did that involved my year should have my signature on the bottom. It had to be important. And so we got £10,000 from Guinness, we got £10,000 from Rank. David Williams' wife, David died when we were in Bordeaux, Saint-Emilion, a couple of years before. But she was so involved supporting the company, she gave us £5,000. And so it went on. And we decided to have this raffle in Guildhall, and the raffle produced another £7,000 or £8,000. So when it all totaled up, we had £42,000. And I was able to present cheques to the Lord Mayor, Hugh Bidwell, the chief of head of St Bart's Hospital, and also St Paul's Cathedral. Those were the three main, and also our own charity, the Marketors Fund. So that was all presented in the interval at Guildhall. And Richard Baker, of course, who's a great music enthusiast, he knew all the pieces of music, and he went through and explained everything. It was a very successful. I've still got I kept all the quotations from various people. The Lord Mayor made a wonderful gesture towards the company. Sir Paul Newell, who was one of our aldermen now and Lord Mayor some years later, he was a sheriff in that year. He and his wife came, and they said, there's never been anything that a livery company has done that will surpass what the Marketors have done this evening. So it was a highly successful thing. And even a year later, I remember one lady writing to me and said, this was from, I think, the Lady magazine. She wrote and said that she was reminded only the other day of what a wonderful evening they had as a guest of someone at this wonderful concert.
So there's obviously, I mean, one of my questions was going to be about how the company's reputation has developed in the city over the years. But this must have been a step change.
It went from strength to strength. I'll give you a small example of how iconic it was. When we designed this wonderful programme with this in a black cover with the chain of office in the letter 8, that was a wonderful piece of artwork. It really was. Ingenious, I thought. And it was published in a leaflet we were sending out to all the livery. And I think it was the master-elect of the Mercers all wrote to us and said how disgusted he was that a livery company could embellish the Lord Mayor's chain of office in such a symbolic way. I didn't give him the pleasure of having a response. I just left it, as I was shown by what we can do. Well, of course, all the comments afterwards, after the concert, were such. So I thought, well, he can now take what he likes from that. But it was a tremendous year, and one that lives in our memory to this day.
I've always felt that the Marketors ought to be the House of Lords of marketing, if I could put it that way. It ought to be top people. You needed to have a hard core of the top blue chip company marketing directors or equivalents. They might be chairman or managing director. But you needed to have that hard core. You must be careful you don't have too many consultants. I can say that having been a consultant. You won't keep top people unless you have enough of their peers. They want to meet other peers. They don't want to meet lots of people touting for business. And I felt that that was very important to achieve that. And so I worked very hard to try to increase the profile of the company in the city and in the country. And that's why I developed the idea of an award for the environment, marketing the environment. It seemed to me that if we could get the Marketors in the public arena, which we did, because we had, one of my clients was National Power, and Peter Vey he was the communications director at National Power, he became a member. And I persuaded them to present a trophy, the award for marketing the environment. And they were very good. They allowed me to commission the trophy. I went to Garrard's, the Royal Jewellers, and they designed a beautiful silver gilt trophy. It cost about £4,000 at that time, which is quite a lot of money. But they also set aside a budget for press advertising. They had a PR campaign and a direct mail campaign. And the direct mail campaign covered all the top marketing people in the country, inviting them to join. So I felt that that was an achievement because we were in press advertisements telling people the Marketors existed. It was a small press campaign, but nevertheless it was in the nationals. And that was one of the main things that I wanted to do. The other thing was to increase our presence in the city, and I worked very hard to bring the top masters in, members of the top 12 companies. We had lots of masters from time to time. We used to have one, I think, or two at dinners and so on. I wanted to have more than that, but I wanted the top people, because it seems to me that in the city there are three categories. There's the 12 who are exclusive. There are the others who have halls, and then there are the other group who do not have halls, which is one of the reasons why I was very interested in trying to get a Marketors Hall. Because I felt if we were going to be the top professional body, for heaven's sake, with marketing people, surely we could raise enough money to produce our own hall, particularly by leasing out accommodation in the hall to other people. And if you could build a church, as small parishes do, over 10 years, 15 years, surely we could do that. That was not to be. People were afraid of it, afraid of the financial risk and so on. I think it was a pity, but you have to go, you know, with what the court decide to do at a particular time.
Well, I was trying to slow things down a little bit because I felt then that there were far too many events and we were in danger of sort of falling over ourselves. So I deliberately reduced the number but made sure we had high quality people to speak at them and interesting places to visit. The other thing I was quite keen on was to do my best to see the Marketors better known, and I happened to know a number of the great 12 masters of that year, and 8 of the 12 came to one or other of our great dinners.
So how do you see the company's reputation in the city evolving over the years? Because you've seen it for a long time.
Yes, I think it's becoming better known, although there are still people from other liveries who say, "What did you say? Marketors, what are they?" But I think the profession of marketing is being better recognised, and that's probably due in no small measure to the existence of our livery.
How do you see marketing as a profession then changing as well?
I think it's much more seen to be important in a commercial sense, and I think we see that from the more professional approach that large companies in particular are taking to make sure that that particular function is represented at a high level.
Well, the events, of course, become highlights, I think, during your year as master. I certainly had one interesting privilege in that the Bishop of London was installed. It's Richard Charters. And I was invited to the ceremony at St. Paul's. I'm probably the only master that's ever had the opportunity to do that. That was quite stunning, and it came early in my year and kind of set the tone. I think the overseas trip that we made to San Francisco was good fun. I seem to recall you and I speaking at the Haas Business School in Berkeley.